Great.
Good. Actually, it wasn't quite as loud in the cafeteria this morning as it was yesterday morning. But
kind of curious about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good. Well, anyways, thanks for coming to this talk today. What we're going to be talking about is pretty much what's happening in BC. So one of the big objectives for me for this whole conference is to actually try and start to recreate or create the same kind of community here in British Columbia and ideally in Canada too, that I've seen at other collective biofuels conferences in the US. And so I'm really excited about kind of transplanting that energy and kind of kickstarting some things off. And so there's kind of two things that have been bringing all the different co-ops together in BC now together. And that's, one of them of course was the dreaded carbon tax, which has kind of been a little bit of a rallying point for us. But also this conference, it has really been working to bring us closer together and talk about how we can work together so that there's kind of reciprocity between the co-ops. So a co-op member in the Cowichan Valley can get fuel in Victoria, and a Victoria member can get fuel in Vancouver, and vice versa. So that's kind of the objective here. So my talk started out being what was kind of, I was going to talk about our co-op here in the Cowichan Valley, the Cowichan Biodiesel Co-op, and how we used a collective approach to get to where we are, to build something from nothing. It was the original title of this talk, and I thought, well, if we're talking about a collective approach, and we're kind of thinking, I think let's think of the future. So I invited Luke from the Vancouver Biodiesel Co-op, and I invited Kenji from the Island Biodiesel Co-op to come in and give a talk and start talking about collaboration in a bigger sense, like between the co-ops. And so what I think we'll do is we'll just give a really brief introduction of each of our co-ops. We each have about 10 minutes to talk about that. And then we're going to open it up and we're going to talk about building this BC biofuel network. So Cowichan initiatives. And in the Cowichan Valley, it's not just a co-op, it's really kind of this interesting partnership between the Cowichan Biodiesel Co-op and another organization called Cowichan Energy Alternatives. We kind of found that there were some limitations when we kind of reached the limitations of what you could do with a co-op. And I know that for the people who are in co-ops, they'll probably understand this. The people outside, co-ops are kind of a funny animal. They're kind of a funny animal because there's a joke that a co-op is 6 people doing all the work and the rest of the people, looking for something from it. So a lot of times, it all depends on the type of the co-op. And so what we found was that a distribution co-op was something that worked better for us in the Cowichan Valley, where it isn't involved in the production and it isn't involved in the oil collection. All the kind of, in some ways, the heavy lifting that was falling on just a few shoulders. And so what we found also is that we needed a fundraising vehicle as well, and so that's where the nonprofit comes in. And so there's this kind of partnership where Cowichan Energy Alternatives does the oil collection and does the processing, and it all does it under the umbrella as a producing member of the co-op. And so there have been a number of producing members in the past. And so the co-op is kind of the umbrella, the community under which it all happens. And so the Cowichan Biodiesel Co-op runs the Cardlock that we have for the distribution. I think I'll get to those slides in a minute. So some of the core motivations of the co-op: energy security, greenhouse gas reductions, and sustainable silver buckshot solutions. And this is kind of, in some ways, looking at, we're kind of keeping an eye to the future here too, that there's been some talk about expanding what the co-op does besides just biodiesel, but this kind of also explains our approach at Cowichan Energy Alternatives, the nonprofit. Next. And so this is another motivation in the Cowichan Valley, and this is one of the reasons why we really wanted to address the food versus fuel issue with having Josh come and premiere his movie Fuel, that there's an incredible dependence on fossil fuels for agriculture, and on the island here we only have about 3 days worth of food supply. It all is transported from somewhere else, and so they're interlinked to the very, very important, issues that need to be addressed together. So next. So Cowichan Biodiesel Co-op started in late 2004 as a collective of about 20 enthusiasts sharing information of local biodiesel production and use. Early distribution was selling biodiesel by the jug at the Duncan farmers market. So we started out with a number of different producers, and it was kind of like a brewer's club. And when we had our first meeting, like in, I think it was December 2004, our meeting was crashed by people who wanted the fuel. So right away there was already more demand than there was supply. That's how it started out, and that's how it's been throughout the entire history of the co-op so far. That was where I think someone's got an idea. Well, we've got people who want to, produce it on this side. We want people who want to use it on this side. Let's all kind of get together and establish this co-op. And so since that time, we now have distribution through a Cardlock that's open 24/7, located at Cowichan Petroleum Sales in Duncan. And Cowichan Petroleum Sales is actually a private company, locally owned, that sells fossil diesel and fossil gasoline. So that may seem like an unlikely kind of mix, but it works really well. And unlike a lot of big, going into Esso or Shell or something like that, I know the owner. I can walk in and I can tell him about all the benefits of biodiesel, shake his hand, and tell him that our members will also mix and blend their fuel with his product. And so that's what happened. That's what we do. We have 100% biodiesel from this Cardlock, and the members blend it to whatever ratio they want, because the other pump, the fossil diesel pump, is right across from it. Yeah.
Since you guys don't have the same subsidy situation we have in the U.S., is the term B100, does it still have the same kind of credibility up here that it used to have down in the States?
It's true. It's a true B100. Absolutely. Yeah. We don't
no
mix
blender.
Yeah.
What a nice reality.
Yeah. Exactly. 100%. Yeah. Down to the last.
I like that blender's credit, but B100. I have license plates that say use B100, and I can't put them anywhere now.
Yeah. It's fun. So we just had the grand opening of the Cowichan Biofuel facility at Bings Creek Solid Waste Management Depot in partnership with local government. So another thing that's been a real benefit to us, as I said, we've right from the start had this really kind of collaborative approach that we've just gone out and we've talked about what we want to do and why it's good and why it's going to be good, what the mutual benefits are, right? And so for the Cowichan Valley Regional District, some of the benefits I can talk about right away that get my foot in the door is that we can start saving you money by collecting waste cooking oil from residences, not just commercial restaurants. And so that's the stuff that gets dumped down the drain. I don't know if you've seen your parents do it, or maybe you've done it at one point. Turn the hot water tap on and put the bacon fat down and then never think of it again. So that does millions of dollars worth of damage to sewer systems and wastewater. So that was a good foot in the door right there. Another good, because especially we had an estimate that I think nearly 1.5 million liters a year. There was an estimate from about 5 years ago that an engineer in Greater Victoria basically said that 1.5 million liters a year was going down the drains. But anyway, so it was pretty significant. And the next thing was that all the municipalities got together and decided that basically the University of British, the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, where all the municipalities get together, and it was to basically pass that they were going to become carbon neutral by 2012. And so that was another big incentive of the Cowichan Valley Regional District to start looking at this and saying, looking for a local solution. So they're going to be using the biofuel that we produce at the Cowichan Biofuel facility, or the Cowichan Biofuel facility, because we're working on them with a pilot project. They haven't started yet, but we're going to be putting together a blending pump for them to use B20. So the Cowichan Biofuels Initiative aims to provide biofuels produced locally from recycled waste cooking oil. And this is the combination of the nonprofit and the co-op that have kind of come together, and it's been able to enable us to do this. And success built on a growing list of partners, and that's it. The idea is that, as I said, we've been very collaborative. We've chosen, once we started getting confident with what we were doing and the product and all the benefits, we came out of the basements and the garages and didn't feel like we needed to hide, and didn't want to, because we wanted to bring as many people in and to use the product as possible. So now the idea is that expanding this and expanding it outside of our co-op too, because biodiesel is a really interesting thing when you consider the whole local, act local phenomenon and looking for local solutions, because biodiesel is a transport fuel. It's designed to be used to transport you from one place to another. So when a Cowichan Biodiesel Co-op member is transporting themselves with our fuel away from where they can get our fuel, where do they continue to use biodiesel? Because as most of us probably know, we're all very motivated trying to use biodiesel all the time. And so it really hurts us to put fossil diesel in the car. So that's the idea here now too, is to actually start talking about building a BC biofuel network. And with that, next slide. Yeah. So I'm going to run through Cowichan Energy Alternatives. I think I've talked about that a little bit already, so that Luke can have a chance to come up here too. With a couple quick projects. Cowichan Energy Alternatives also makes revenue through consulting too. We do clean energy greenhouse gas reduction strategies. We do carbon footprint assessments. We've helped organize a bulk buy to be able to get purchasing power for solar panels as well. So there was, I think early on we were trying to, I guess, stimulate people or get the information out about about what we call the low-hanging fruits of alternative energies, right? And so one of them was we also viewed as being solar thermal, that it can be very cost effective and it can be used right now with existing technology. And so we organized some information sessions, got groups of people together and organized a bulk buy. And instead of having individuals going to solar companies trying to negotiate a price, they were coming to us and bidding for, like, I think 35 people ended up putting solar panels in from this. And that was done with a fellow named Peter Nix. He kind of led the charge with, in partnership with the Cowichan Carbon Busters. We have educational events. We put on the fuel film and of course this freedom film as well. And this is all done with the co-op. And again, the Cowichan Biofuels Mission is probably one of the most significant. It's probably the biggest project that both organizations are working on right now. So this is our Cardlock as going in right now. It's pretty, low-tech system, high-tech for us, but low-tech as far as fueling stations go. It's probably like from the circa late 80s, early 90s. And this is the grand opening. Funny, this is Lynn. She went a little faster there, so that's actually people looking very shocked that, that the ribbon's going away before it can be cut. Next. And this is the facility before, and this is the facility after. This is the grand opening just a week ago, actually, just before the conference. So it's all been timed really quite perfect. Thanks very much. And I think we've really come a long way. And again, I want to emphasize that it couldn't have been done just by the individuals that were trying to push it forward through the co-op and through CEA. It's really been a unique diversity of partnerships through private industry, local government, and other nonprofits. And so, this is our kind of public service. We don't get a lot of oil from it, but we get a lot of kudos from local government, and people love it. People love having a place to drive and just put their used cooking oil. And it's just one more thing you can recycle now in the Cowichan Valley. And actually, yes, we have a solar hot oil system. If you were in my talk yesterday, it's one of kind of the innovations that we've done at Biggs Creek. It's going to be a demonstration facility, not just for biofuels, but all the different. We're looking at all the ways that you're making biofuels too to make it sustainable. So this is just one other way of doing that, because obviously I think people that make biofuel know that the heat requirements that go into that, and the energy use can be quite high. So this is actually, these 3 panels are heating a 450-liter tank completely to about 60, 65 degrees Celsius by 12:30, 1 o'clock every day, so we're adding another tank. I think I'll just roll through the educational stuff. And we always put this kind of thing up because whenever I give a talk, I like to throw out also, how people can be involved as well, because again, we're always looking at kind of growing the network, and there's always things that we need. Yeah.
Can we go back 1 second?
Yeah.
Did you have any difficulty getting these people to join your effort?
Well, you know what? You leverage everything. The secret is leverage. As soon as you get one person on, like, if you're building your own business, if your first investor is your parents, right? You leverage that. You don't tell the next person that you're an investor with your parents or something. You say, I've got one investor, or you talk it up. and you build it up. And also, I'm fortunate because I've worked with people at the CBRD before. My background is environmental consulting. I'm a professional agrologist and geoscientist here in the Valley. I know some of the people, and I can prepare the reports and the proposals, and I can talk the language, right? Which gives you access. And so when I send an email to someone talking about something or setting up a meeting, they don't see this scruffy guy with a beard. There's a couple initials. There's some initials at the end of my name and things. So, yeah, and I get in the door. And, I hate to say it, but it's true. It really does. It really does help. And now that I've got actually some gray in the beard, that helps too. Nothing like a little gray in the beard to look like a face of wisdom, regardless of whether it's true or not. And now I think So as far as what we're looking for here, next slide. I always like to throw this out. We're always looking for equipment. We're always looking for assistants, volunteers, and staff. Main thing, doers. And that's kind of one of the things that has really made this work. It's a huge group of people, but there's only there's a few core people that you're always relying on. There's a few core people that are usually carrying the burden, right? So, but anyways, I think with that, I'll move on and say that the focus of this again is looking at those it's looking at those collaborations, and with that, I'd like to invite you.
So I'll just I'll quickly go through kind of the past, present, future of the Vancouver Biodiesel Co-op. So I'm kind of representing two organizations here. One is the Vancouver Biodiesel Co-op, and we're a co-op that doesn't produce any fuel. We just purchase fuel. We have a pump, and we have members, and we're the only source of B100 in the Lower Mainland, really anywhere I think that a consumer can buy biodiesel from. So next slide, please. We're right here, and this is Vancouver. This is downtown, the Science World, if you've ever been to Vancouver. So we're right just there. Next slide. This is a picture of our pump. So the first organization that I'm representing, and I'm on the board of directors of the Vancouver Biodiesel Co-op. I've been doing that for a few years. Kind of just showed up at an AGM because I thought biodiesel was kind of cool. And then they're like, you should really join the board. And then they nominated me, and I was like, well, okay, whatever. And they're like, you won't have to do anything. And now it's 3 years later, and I kind of do the most stuff. Yeah. So that's okay. So this is we have a 4,000 liter tank here. We have our old farmer's pump and a Cardlock. I think I have some other photos of that. And then this building in the back is the recycling alternative. And they're kind of the benevolent overlord corporation that makes our co-op actually possible. So that company is founded by Rob and Louise, and they're really, really great people in the community. They do just tons and tons of work with all sorts of community groups. So they basically are a kind of a garbage and recycling hauler, and they do really good work in the community. They're always, you always see their bins out at all the community events. So they've kind of, they take on a lot of expense. They've basically been the ones to make this happen. So they've got their fleet of diesel trucks, so they fill up off the biodiesel, which is kind of one of their interests, so that they can use it. But they were the people that laid out the cash to buy the new 4,000 liter tank. They bought the new pumps. They did all the work to get them. They make sure those pumps are running. They take the complaints from our members of why they're not running. Wow. They do. They send one of their drivers out to, an hour away to go pick up totes full of fuel. They bring it back. They put it up on forklifts. They fill up the tank. They have their admin staff run all the credit cards. They use their infrastructure. So to me, joining this co-op, I was kind of, as I understood how this worked, and teased apart what they do and what we do, and I'm like, well, we don't really do that much. I mean,
that's kind of like the CEA.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
We just have members that want to buy fuel.
A volunteer model in a co-op, sometimes it depends. There's some really good models, but for a distribution co-op, it's not.
And we don't even produce our own fuel, so it would be even more work.
So do they get paid in fuel essentially?
So that is an interesting question. I don't know because the financials are a little opaque. I don't see what they actually buy fuel from. They network with different suppliers and find the best fuel. And they give fuel that's under the mandate of the co-op. So our co-op has our AGM, and we say we want recycled fuel, we want locally sourced, we want ASTM spec, and we want maybe vegetarian if possible or something. But they go out and they do that, right? We'll go to the next slide here. So this is kind of just a close-up shot. That's our chair, Dave. So this is our Cardlock. This is called a Card Master, made by Card Vending Solutions, and they're, I think, in Washington State. That's a very simple card lock. So it's when they put together this pump, it's not like a commercial card lock solution, so you can't scan a credit card there. In our co-op model, you sign up, you attend an orientation, you get a member card, kind of a fleet access card. You don't even need it. You can just go up to that pump and you punch in your member number, then you punch in your PIN, and then the pump turns on and you fill up. And then your credit card gets charged later. So I'll talk about that in a sec. Next slide. So the Biodiesel pump was started in 2003 by Rob Miller and Recycling Alternative. At that time, they had a 50-liter drum, and they did collections, and they did homebrew biodiesel. It was like, in a shed, and they have a busy yard where they have all these trucks coming in and out. So it's kind of like awkward, and they didn't have that many members, and it's a hand pump, and then you measured out how many liters, and you wrote it in a binder. And like they've showed me this binder from like years past, and there's still like overdue payments and stuff that no one ever wrote down. There's all these post notes and then lines from here and like red pen over here that lines for that. It's totally ridiculous. Next slide. There's kind of problems at that stage. So first off, a 50-gallon tank runs dry pretty quick. And then they're kind of losing money, and not really through malicious intent at all, but just like, you forget to write down, or there's spillage or whatever. And it's again, this volunteer effort in a co-op. Then Recycling Alternative, they go out and they're like, hey, we're gonna get this solved. They bought the 4,000-liter tank, they bought a Cardlock, an old farmer pump. Their admin staff processes all the payments. So I sat in on this, and I'm a computer programmer, so I think everything should be automated and humans shouldn't do any mindless tasks. And these poor girls that run the admin desk here, they just, like every 2 weeks, they spend an hour, well, they go into like Hyper Terminal and they connect to the Cardlock and they pull it down to a file, and then they transfer that over here, and then they spend an hour in Excel copying and pasting. And they print that out, and then they take the binder full of credit card numbers and then manually copy that all onto a paper, and then take the paper 10 feet over here to the point of sale terminal and then punch in all the transactions. And so I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. So we now have this tank.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I don't know that that's really fulfilling work for those people. Who are already way too busy and overloaded.
That sounds very familiar. That's pretty much our.
So the city likes what we've got. The city is trying to be like the greenest city in the world or something out of this initiative, Greenest City. So they really like what we're doing, but they're just kind of like not really sure what the biodiesel stuff is. And so they're like, well, you've got to install a concrete pad, and you've got to put a berm around it and a drain. And so they did that, and the city's happy. Next slide. So today, we are basically BC's biggest biofuel co-op. We have 200 plus members, 200 to 300. We're the only source of B100. We have 24/7 access to the Cardlock, and we sell, that's kind of my estimate. We don't have good numbers on this because all of our data is in like a binder that nobody looks at. It's kind of like not the greatest situation, right? So, our challenges now at this kind of stage where we're at is, cold winters are cold, right? So we just almost shut down, or literally shut down in the wintertime, because we don't have really members that will kind of go in there to make the pump better. And these ridiculous taxes we've talked about already that just completely kill us. So that bumped our price up 30 cents a liter overnight. That's $1.20 a gallon. It's just really extremely uncompetitive. It's really hard for us to do it. And then these manual processes just are so costly for Recycling Alternative, and they're totally off the books, which is what I don't like as a co-op member, because I don't know what the costs are to maintain this system. So that doesn't seem like sustainable, that we need to have this corporation that is nice, but they're bleeding cash on this project, and I appreciate a lot what they do, but that's not ideal. And then, so those are the kind of technical challenges. Socially, it's really tough to maintain an engaged board of directors. It's hard for us to even have quorum at AGMs, despite having 200 plus members. And then we don't have like a director that's really excellent at that outbound communication and communication with our members, that engagement. So that's a challenge, and that's not my skill set. So engaging our membership to like lobby the government more to help us with that, it's just not, we're not good at that. Next slide. So this is a project that I've been talking about quite a bit this weekend. This is a tool that I built. This is live. I can give you a demo after this. So this is a biodiesel club billing tool. So I sat with these admin girls and I saw what they did and I was like, this should just be automated. So this is a website that we go to, and basically it has a few different features. This is kind of the landing page. This is secure login. So basically, I kind of put up some statistics. So once we have all of the data of like how much fuel we sell and to whom, we can, once we have that in a database, then we have lots of information we can get from it. So we can look, this is like, we haven't loaded all our members into it. It's just members that have bought fuel since the system went live. So there's like 19 people who bought fuel, 24 fuel sales, bought 1,100 liters. We can calculate about how much taxes we paid on that. We can calculate our approximate CO2 reduction by selling biofuel versus if that fuel was burnt as petrol fuel. So it's kind of really nice that we can get those metrics on it. And because it's all in a database, we can now report like over specific time periods, or we can do, at the AGM next year, I can just give a comprehensive report and say like, we actually burned this much fuel, this many transactions, this many members were active, and do all sorts of breakdowns of that stuff. So it's like we now actually have data to run our co-op on. Some other thing, maybe there's one more slide on this you can go to. Okay, go back then. Just the left arrow. Yeah. So the other thing is you can jump in here and you can look at all recent transactions. So if I were to click that, you'd see my transaction from filling up the drive over here to the co-op. You'd see all the unpaid transactions. In the future, this system will be hooked up to a credit card processor that will probably go live in the next week or two. And that means as soon as you fill up from the pump and you hang out the thing, Cardlock says this transaction's done. And then I have a little computer program that checks it every 10 seconds and says, oh, a new transaction finished, runs through the credit card processor. Okay, that passed. Email the member or an email receipt, and then they get this really nice, cute little email that says, hey, you just bought this, we charged your credit card, it was all good. By the way, the fuel that you just bought just offset 72 kilograms of CO2, so you should feel good about that. By the way, you've purchased 700 liters of fuel over the past year, so thank you so much, and that CO2 reduction is this. And we can even introduce some kind of fun concepts of like, you get a badge if you fill up every month for a year or something. Or
do you have a merchant terminal for the pump itself, or are you still running through recycling alternatives payment?
So, like today, the co-op doesn't have any infrastructure here.
Yeah.
So the merchant account, to get that set up, so that's with the Victoria company actually, and Recycling Alternative applied for that. So Recycling Alternative is funding me to build this system because they see it as like a good thing to have, a good asset to have. So that's why I kind of said at the top of the talk, I'm representing both of those groups. So with Recycling Alternative, I'm partnering with them to kind of build this out. We're building it out as open source. But the idea is we can start maybe running it and operating it for other co-ops down the road. That's kind of the goal. So it's kind of a little bit of a business opportunity where we can operate, maintain, improve this tool for much, much cheaper than any individual co-op could do it. And because this stuff scales, unlike physical fuel production, we can host this and offer it to a wide variety of people and keep our costs. So it's kind of like amortizing the cost over many co-ops. And then you can look at all the members, and you can change the fuel price, and you can go in, just from the web terminal, you can reset someone's PIN, you can freeze someone out of their Cardlock, you can do all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of the big project. I'm really excited about this. I've been working on it a lot.
Yeah, great. When we're talking about getting the co-ops to work together, having a standardized way where everything, all the co-ops can maybe use the same system is good timing.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, this is created by both of us. They're funding my time to build this, which is awesome. It's a web-based tool for the administration, and then it also will do like membership fee, annual membership fees. It'll charge that, which we don't charge currently because we don't have anyone to go run 300 credit card transactions, which sucks. So it's not a good situation. That's why I want to automate everything so that humans get out of the loop. So it interfaces with the Cardlock in real time and it tracks everything. Next slide. So the transaction is sent to the credit card processor, emails, and then bad accounts are frozen if your credit card expires or whatever. So we're just on top of that.
The little message about CO2 reduction at the fill up and historically, is that something that like seems meaningful to a lot of people? I mean, we've been talking about adding CO2 messaging to our marketing, like that kind of thing, and I'm just curious how that's working out, if you got feedback on it.
This system's not really live yet, so none of our members, aside from myself, have received email. It's something that I kind of put in because A, it's just trivial to calculate, and B, I think it is like at least a number that people can look at and be like 50 kilograms. That's
Well, the number's always higher than people expect because of the chemistry with
The chemistry,
the
yeah, that's
molecule.
right.
So yeah, I don't know.
But
I get the feeling that at least it's one piece of feedback that tells you you're a good person.
And for
you know.
municipalities with
Exactly.
targets.
And I
that's
can
beautiful.
speak to that a bit. Yeah, for municipalities or it's here in Canada where or in BC now where they have to start accounting for their carbon emissions. That it's really important. But also when I give talks to audiences and things like that, and I say how many tons of carbon we've reduced in the valley, we get hand claps. Like, so people love to hear that.
And this will all be automatic now.
It's an American measure of the good you're doing, really.
So now it's just like, in the past year you saved like a ridiculous amount of CO2. And like that's all of us in the room have been doing that, but because we don't track it digitally, it's hard to know what those numbers are usually, right? Maybe next year.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's about the number, but I think it's that constant, that feedback. It's like Pavlovian response. You do it, and then you get something. You get this
Your
email
little
being
pat on the
like,
back.
"You're
Yeah.
super." How much more
That's really
you
valuable.
go back again?
Oh,
Yeah,
it is.
it doesn't
It
even
is. It's
matter
reinf-
what the number
I
is.
think it's reinforcing, so I think it's a great idea. And
Yeah.
really, for so many people that are joining the co-ops, that's why they're doing it. Concerns over climate change and that sort of thing. And that's
It should be a
American
text
measure.
message, actually.
What's that?
Should be a text message.
I think it's
Anyways.
John have a question. And
I think if I were the geek running this, I would also add a comment. Besides how much carbon your purchase just saved, a running total of how much carbon the co-op has saved. So
Yeah.
to see this enormous number,
Yeah.
the last digit going click.
Yeah, that's great.
It would also be neat to kind of compare it to certain types of use. Like, this is equivalent to the amount that, Abrams tank uses over half a mile or something.
Actually, you could bring up exactly what, from a behavioral standpoint, we'll put on my psychologist hat here. We think in ratios, we don't think in absolutes, we don't understand that.
It's got to be compared against something.
And so a comparator, a running total with the co-op total is one thing, but a running total with comparison to a typical petroleum thing, it's not just the use saved, but here's the percentage.
Yeah.
And people will quote that.
And I'll have to say, like, maybe we can save this to the end too, because we have one more speaker coming up, so we can.
Sorry.
We'll keep it rolling. No, great
It's
conversation.
open source, patches are accepted. You can send me a patch for your new feature. It's kind of like a slight in the open source world, like, 'cause someone can give you an idea and you just be like, oh, patches are accepted. It's kind of like, go fuck yourself. But I like the idea. I like the idea. But it's like, So, I like these ideas. So, with automated billing, there's kind of two aspects of it. One is like being lean within our organization so that we don't have like superfluous costs that we should actually have low, and that we can have better operational execution, right? So that's a real good internal value. And then externally, it's a much better experience for our people because they get billed immediately, it's predictable, they get the email as they're driving away, and then we can do these totally trivial to implement things that make people feel good about them, right? So it's kind of those two, internal and external.
There's no way to get immediate credit card authorization before the pump opens, is there?
Our Cardlock won't allow that.
Okay.
But you can, with the credit card processor I'm using, you can pre-authorize things.
Okay.
That's what your credit card pump, like a
Yeah,
Chevron.
you've got the credit
yeah.
card number, and you've got
But
the.
you guys aren't quite there yet.
No, and also we have members, so it's like.
You know how to.
know where you're
we know
at.
how to- Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And it's better than the notebook system.
Yes,
the notebook honor
absolutely.
system.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
it's 10 o'clock.
Next slide. So expansion. So one thing, we can take this this software, and if we can combine it with some hardware. Now, I would love to do this as open source hardware. then we can basically have on a trailer a Cardlock, a fuel tank, a pump, a GPS, a little cell phone modem, solar panel, and some batteries. You've now got a self-contained thing that you can go and you can fill up fuel from like anywhere that you can drop this trailer off, and then that thing reports back to the server, and then your credit card's charged and you get the email. So that's kind of like a dream down the road, and like in that way we could almost kind of compete with the gas station chains. There's problems and stuff with that. But I would love to do that with open source hardware and open source software, where any of you guys in the markets that like the company that I'm involved with can't serve, you guys can just like take those plans off the internet, build them, fabricate them yourselves, or build kits. So we can build an industry around this, and we all work on the same thing.
Are there any Ministry of Environment standards around having a trailerized system? I know they use it for airplanes and fleets and all that. But
So if you put a license plate on your, this is oversimplification, but if you put a license plate and the wheels on your thing, it's way different than, way different regulations than building a physical thing.
You're pretty much off the hook, except until you have the trailer sitting for long enough, and then you got to start treating it semi-stationary.
But fortunately, we're not dealing with fossil diesel too, so it's, it is treated differently. Okay,
so that's kind of like, you know, one way that we could be nimble and compete. So that's maybe my last slide. Yeah, okay, so thank you.
So I do not have a slide presentation, and that kind of sums up the difference between the Island Biodiesel Co-op and the other two. We're at that before stage, and we're struggling to get to the stage of the other two co-ops. What I'm going to share with you is the learning curve I've had trying to deal with the tax issue, the carbon tax issue, the struggles and challenges. So you could call this How to Become a Scumbucket Lobbyist. And I highly encourage all of you to go towards that, to look into that avenue of becoming a lobbyist for biodiesel. So a year ago we had a meeting with the Ministry of Finance telling them our concerns with the carbon tax and biodiesel, and they listened and they said, oh, it was an oversight. The situation has not changed. So I guess our little co-op, three of us directors have sort of taken that challenge on to try and rectify that situation. So I guess I have a little bit of experience on formal negotiating committee in an orchestra dealing with management. So I'm just wondering, first of all, how many of you here have had experience with formal negotiations? Okay, so this might be useful. Things that I've learned from conferences regarding that is when you go into a formal negotiation, try not to ask questions. So preparation is the key. Another key for a negotiation is what do you have to bring to the table. You should not just be taking or asking for something. You have to give. It's a give and take situation. So with those two things in mind, there was someone yesterday, Mary, from New Jersey. She's in some government. Oh, she had the great idea of writing a letter. So I've written up a letter this morning, and I'm hoping as many of you who feel you could. There's a letter. So maybe you could just take a minute to read it. Can you read it, or should I read it out? Read it.
I don't mind if you read it.
So, dear Honorable Minister of Finance, we, the undersigned, strongly recommend that under the Carbon Tax Act, Schedule 1, interpretation, you remove B, renewable fuel, under the definition of light fuel oil. So, in my, I tracked down the Carbon Tax Act, which is actually quite difficult now on the internet. They hide it. It was actually on the first hit, but you have to scroll down a lot of ways to actually find the Carbon Tax Act. And some of them, they make it so that you have to subscribe, and it's very convoluted now.
There's a website called CanLEI, Canadian Legal Institute, or Legal Information Institute, CANLII.com.org.ca, all of them will work. And you can find any statute or regulation in Canada on that site.
There's also a site called BC Laws. I'm not sure the exact website, and it'll take you directly to BC legislation. It's alphabetical. You go to C, you click C, and it'll take you right to the carbon tax.
Much better than Google.
Yeah.
Thank you. And actually, in terms of tracking down information in BC, there's what they call it the Hansard, and that's the full record of all the debate in Parliament. So, how many are Americans here? Okay, so I don't know what the situation for you. I highly again recommend that you find your state internet site so you can keep track of the actual debate that goes on in your Senate, the state senates. Yeah, just to keep track of the actual wording that goes down and what kind of debate they're actually having. Because when this went down, there was no debate from the opposition. In BC, I don't believe there's ever been a minority government. It's always sort of majority government. So the only thing an opposition can do is record on the official record, make a case against a bad policy. So that's pretty much it. While we understand that doing so complicates the application of the carbon tax, we nevertheless must stress that one, the intent of any carbon tax is to tax fossil carbon, not renewable carbon, which is environmentally benign. Two, the sudden application of both the carbon tax and motor fuel tax in January 2010 has crippled the domestic BC biodiesel production industry. Three, since BC imports over 80% of its petroleum fuel and an estimated 90% of its required renewable fuel content, any incentive for a domestic biofuel industry means huge dollars kept in the coffers of the Ministry of Finance. Four, a growing and healthy renewable fuel industry in BC will provide jobs. And five, any incentive to users and producers of high content biodiesel, B6 to B100, will lower overall carbon emissions in BC. We sincerely believe compliance with this request will result in increased revenues for the ministry, perhaps I should say long-term increased revenues, a more stable and secure BC biofuels industry, and a healthier and more robust environment for our citizenry. Thank you in advance for your support. So if anybody does want to add their organization to this list, it would be great. If you do want to sign independently as an international collective biofuels conference, we would love, we would really appreciate it. So we'll print those out and, or do we have access to a printer?
No.
Otherwise,
No,
I'll just on a blank piece of paper that will indicate your support for this letter.
And what may be good too is if we get a list of people who would then send it themselves to an email address that you would provide. So
Sounds great.
maybe coming from a number of different.
So what you need is a sign-up sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sign-up sheet would be easier.
I was just going to make a suggestion on number 4, where you talk about a healthy renewable fuel industry in BC.
Yes.
You might, if you can find any stats on jobs or income generation, revenue, anything like that. I know there's some reports in the U.S. Washington and Oregon have reports on the renewable fuel industry down there. You might be able to pull something out on like biodiesel, but it might just help the argument.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to find the info for BC, even about how much is being imported, how much is produced. I haven't actually been able to track that information.
Well, under the renewable requirement, we don't have stats, but I would say that all of it's being imported.
Yeah, that's my guess. That's why I put it on.
The way to prove that would be to find a BC producer who's able to sell it to a petroleum company for blending, and I don't think there are any.
I will reaffirm that because the two significant producers in
Are sending it
BC
to
are
Washington.
sending it to me.
Yeah. Thank you.
People I know, people I know.
Yeah.
So that's it. So thank you. And
So that's what's supporting the BC biodiesel industry right now.
It's
Export.
Washington State,
Washington.
and some's going all the way to Oregon. Some might even make it all the way to Northern California.
Yeah. And so,
which is proof of how insane it is, right? That
Yeah.
It's going all the way to Northern California rather than staying right here.
Exactly. It's like
Despite the US dollar.
the two hands of the BC government are like not knowing what the other one is doing because
Well,
in one,
I know what they're doing. We know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're just not closing the loop problem.
Right. Because the one to create the incentive for the demand, and then the other to create a disincentive for the production.
Yeah.
You know, the sourcing of it is.
Let's stop talking about this tax, it's just a total bummer.
but anyways, this is, and I want to bring it back, because this is one of the things where bringing the co-ops together is something that it is kind of one of these galvanizing events that's helped get the co-ops talking. And so definitely we want to move forward on this, and this is something mainly for our co-ops to address, and we're dealing with it in a number of different ways. And I think really fortunate to have someone like Michael Rensing in the Ministry of Energy and Mines, who's open to conversing with us, very, you know, frankly about that. And so, yeah, there are a number of different ways that we're going to approach that. But really, the next thing that I wanted to do was really have this opportunity to talk about the collaboration. And this is one of the things we're collaborating on. The other thing is building this BC Biofuels network too, where we can address common challenges like this, common objectives too, which is trying, again, one of the key things we're trying to do is create, almost call it like a federation of co-ops or something, to bring them closer together so that we're all talking the same language, so that we're all doing, maybe starting to harmonize our approach. And if we're putting Cardlocks up, then if we're using the same system, like the one that Luke's developing right now, then I think we're going to make some really big steps with making this transport fuel available to our co-op members when they're transporting themselves outside of our locales. Is that a question, Mike?
Yeah, just a comment that the idea of a federation of co-ops is exactly how the fuel co-ops in Canada are structured.
Yeah.
So there's a co-op refinery in Regina that is owned by the umbrella co-ops like Peninsula Co-op,
Federated.
and so on. And so there's actually a hierarchy of co-ops and then co-ops of co-ops and so on,
Right.
until they have the clout they need to do what they
Yeah,
want.
exactly. And so, and we've talked to them too, and unfortunately, I think we're still at such a small scale that it's really tough to talk to the co-ops, at that scale, especially with because again, I actually talked to the co-ops when we were talking about setting up our Cardlock system, and it was much easier to walk into a small business who and do a handshake than to talk to a board in Nanaimo and have to talk to a board in Saskatchewan, and it's so. We're not at that level yet. Maybe one day we will, but this is the first step, I guess, to bringing things closer together. And I may have sounded a little bit harsh about co-ops at the start. I think we're just trying to be realistic here about what works too. And so one of the things that the co-op is really, really good at is the same thing we talked about with creating that solar bulk buy, is pricing power, right? Getting people together who all want the same thing, but it's not available to them as individuals. And so that's one of the biggest strengths about co-ops. And so now, and so we can say it's the same thing. We're magnifying that purchasing power and that political clout by bringing the co-ops together now, more so than we are just as our own individual co-ops. So I guess with that, I just want to throw it out. Questions?
So about co-ops, one of the problems with co-ops though is they're tend to be too rigid, not nimble. Now that's certainly not the flavor of the biofuel co-ops here, but it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that they become stable, and then the executive directors of co-ops end up kind of planting themselves because they've been at it so long, and they become a barrier to progress.
And I think that's a challenge in any institution. That the institution, when it gets to a certain size, starts thinking about the institution and not the things that we're built for.
Yeah, because
but that's I think it's something that maybe we can talk about building in like some kind of I don't know accountability mechanism.
Yeah, term limits.
But you still believe it's the right corporate model, and there's
but it's got some flaws, like being a for-profit company has flaws. So
it's interesting. Maybe we should put that in now, terms for directors.
We have no directors.
Well, the problem is this though: if we had term limits for directors with our co-op, it wouldn't exist anymore. Because it's been the same people doing the work.
It really has to do with the money. When the co-op starts being successful and there's money, that's when you have to have term limits.
Exactly. That's when everything's going to change. Right now, there's more work than there is money, and so you can't, you need to get people at gunpoint. And so you have sometimes going to be careful what you wish for too on a board of directors. The one wrong board of director
is, will paralyze the entire board. We've had that happen, I think 2 or 3 times, 2 times at least in our co-op now. The wrong person is on there. They want to do things, but they don't want to do, they're not on board with what the co-op's about, or maybe, or who knows what's going on. But yeah, and anyway, so yeah, but anyways, again, and so one of the things I want to throw out about that too, with the co-op is really representative of the people in it. So it can be really good or it can be really bad. It's both the strength and the weakness of the co-op is the people in it. And so I think we've been fortunate that we've had a really good core group that have moved things on. And then by creating these partnerships, and our benevolent organization, like Luke was talking about in Vancouver, is the nonprofit. It has the fundraising capabilities that the co-op doesn't, and it's actually doing the administrative work and all these other things for the co-op that no one's going to volunteer to do, right? And so until you get to a point where the co-op's making enough money to pay people to do all those things, right, it's relying on volunteers or a benign, benefactor. Yeah.
If you're not already doing that, I highly recommend keeping some kind of a diary of the process that you're going through on this, both for archival purposes, but also so that it makes it easier for you to share your problems and the solutions that you adopted or used by other co-ops.
Right.
It's this collaboration that we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
If you don't have the documentation, though, and you're relying on memory and tribal knowledge, it just slips through your fingers and goes away.
Yeah. I could write a book on it, I'm sure. When I did this, yeah.
Now you know what.
And you know what? I think it's a good idea, and I think Lyle Estel is very good at that. He writes a blog, and he's really good at getting that story out and kind of and sharing that with people. And we haven't been so good at that. And communications is something that is so essentially important with a co-op, and we're so wrapped up in all the the getting the fuel produced, getting it out, and
You got the data.
the day-to-day stuff. So we haven't had the one person to stand up and volunteer, the right person to do the newsletter right at the end. So I do it as an afterthought at like 2 o'clock in the morning. But it's really true. And so, but we have been fortunate to get funding through the Co-op Development Initiative. It's a federal program. And so as part of that, we are documenting all the things. We're making business plans and everything available to other co-ops. So the idea here is to create a model and so that other groups don't have to recreate the wheel. And that's what this is about too. That's what this whole BC Biofuel Network thing is about, and bringing the co-ops closer together, is so that Luke is working on the software. We've got the biofuels processing facility now. So, and that is one other thing that we've learned too, that a group of producers is a great idea at a start when everybody's driving a 1983 Volkswagen Rabbit, right? But as you start to grow and you get more and more people who are less and less, or further and further removed from what biodiesel is and how to run it, in your car, and problem management, if filters get clogged or whatever else, then you need quality standards, and you need to make sure you have a good quantity, good steady supply as well. So that's the whole idea of centralizing production. And so I think there we've already got the beginnings of a beautiful relationship, that we're doing production and concentrating on that volume and the quality. And Luke and their co-ops are working on the distribution. And so then I think we've already got 2 pieces of the puzzle right there. And also with Kenji working on the political end to try and help with creating the environment that's going to sustain that and nurture it. I think we're already working on 3 important pieces of the puzzle right there, and we can all get together.
So on the distribution thing, I'm really interested in hearing from people that are interested in what I've been talking about. Specifically, kind of like 2 groups: people that have infrastructure already that maybe are unhappy with it or want to find better solutions. Maybe I can understand your problems in your existing equipment and kind of architect that into what I'm building down the road. But also people that are interested in like setting up brand new equipment so that I can make sure that what I'm building will be somewhat suitable or adaptable for those solutions. So please come get my card, or I have the info sheets out on one of the tables out there of this thing, and please get in touch with me, and maybe we can build a really good thing together.
Yeah, and I can give you lots of feedback on that, because we're looking at putting in another couple of Cardlocks in the next while. So we've already purchased some of the equipment, so it's perfect timing. and I will have more questions and to say to you than we can do in this,
And like,
in
let's
this
use
space, that's for
low-cost
sure.
hardware and have a good experience for people and just drive the price down of this stuff.
I think some of the hardware is going to be of a reasonable price because I think having that pre-authorization is essential for scalability. I mean, you have to go there to not lose money.
Time for one more question, Kyle.
I really recommend trying to harmonize this effort with what's happened over in Washington DC, the co-op there, because somebody was working on their own Cardlock system as well, so I'll try to get.
That's excellent, because why stop at DC?
Yeah.
Why stop at DC, right?
He designed hardware and everything, I mean, so we may have an opportunity to harmonize that.
Well,
Yeah.
And alternatively, I mean, I'd be interested in this, except that in California we have variants, and Biofuel Oasis built their Cardlock system on that requirement. So we're kind of copying their Cardlock system.
I think
That
California's
adds,
its own animal.
that adds something to the mix that I don't think we'd have time to talk about right now, but just to be aware of.
Right. Okay, excellent. Well, thanks very much then. Yeah, and thanks to Luke from the Vancouver Biodiesel Co-op. Thanks to Kenji from the Island Biodiesel Co-op. And I think this is the beginning of a great dialogue.